as an Indigenous person, sometimes it's easy to suffer from identity crisis or not knowing too much about who we are. Whether it's been 20 years, 50 years, your spirit doesn't forget. Because this has been our way of life for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Mind Medicine Podcast. It's a beautiful day. It's a new day. It's a new month. And it's a new episode. And today we're going to talk about how beautiful it is to be Indigenous. You know, it's a beautiful day to be Indigenous out there. The sun is shining. I'm feeling good. And we're going to talk a little bit about what it is to be Indigenous. And for some of us, it might be a little bit of an uncomfortable topic because maybe we don't really feel Indigenous enough, quote unquote, Indigenous enough, because, you know, the reality of it is not all of us grew up on the res, not all of us grew up around our people. And sometimes we might be just struggling to reconnect, to reconnect to who we are at a spiritual level. That takes a lot of time. That takes a lot of learning. That takes a lot of knowledge. And not all of us have the advantage or the ability to go and sit down with our elders and do it the old ways. Like they say always, oh, you gotta come and you gotta present tobacco with your questions to your elders. And it's just not that easy for a lot of us. Like I said, not all of us were born in our communities with our families. We weren't raised in our communities alongside our cousins and our aunties and our uncles. Some of us were displaced right from when we were little babies. And that's some of the stuff that we're going to talk about today. And that's why I say it might be a little bit, might be a little uneasy, might make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, but that's okay because these are feelings that we need to face. And how else are we going to get back to who we're supposed to be if we don't start talking about it and don't start making actions towards it? So it's a beautiful day to be Indigenous, like I said. I just wanted to start by acknowledging that we're all different here. We all come from different backgrounds. We've all been raised in different circumstances. But at the root of who we are, we're still Indigenous people. And some of us might feel really displaced from who we're supposed to be because we didn't grow up with those teachings. We didn't grow up with our languages. We didn't grow up with our knowledge systems. And a large part of that is because of what residential schools have done to our people and our communities and our families. Our ways of life were destroyed by residential schools, by the 60s scoop, by, boarding schools if you're down in the United States, by removal from our communities. And I know not all of us listening have grown up with our families, have grown up with our elders and our knowledge keepers, and, have had that advantage to learn our ceremonies along the way. And I just wanted to say that it's okay. It's okay to be confused. It's okay to be unsure about your identity because it's not your fault. It's not your fault that your parents were taken, that your grandparents were taken away from who they are, away from their way of life, away from their identity as an Indigenous person. It's not your fault that they were put in these schools and they suffered. Our languages suffered, our teaching suffered. Our identity as Indigenous people suffered because of the schools, because of the foster homes. And none of that is our fault. Sometimes we look amongst each other and say, whose fault is it that we don't speak our languages, that we don't know our customs, our teachings? It's not any one person's fault. It's not our elders' fault for not teaching us. It's not the young people's fault for not being willing to listen. A lot of damage was done to us as a people. And as you travel amongst our communities these days, it's really evident because A lot of our young people don't speak the languages, they don't understand, myself included. I don't really understand the language, but I'm picking it up as I go, and I try to learn, and I think that's what's important for all of us, is just to face the facts that, our languages are endangered, even though a lot of our languages are still spoken in our communities, but they're spoken by the older population. And it's a huge task to try to bring that back. It's not any one person's responsibility to formulate a plan, to start the movement. It's up to all of us. We each have to play our parts in our homes, in our schools, and in our communities, but it's a huge task. And so today we're talking about, the importance of rediscovering who you are, your identity as an Indigenous person, rediscovering your spirituality, rediscovering your languages. And that itself is a huge task. It's something that I've recently started to undertake myself, is to understand the ceremonies from where I come from, the teachings, as well as the language. Language isn't just words, there's a lot of power behind it. And I want that power for myself. I want that power for my children. So it's almost like a race against time to try to remember, try to intake as much as that information, as much as that language as I can, and to try to hold on to it while I still have time, while we still have time. So if you're one of my Indigenous relatives that lives out in the city, you've always lived out in the city, you grew up in the city, away from your community, away from your family, away from your language, away from your teachings, chances are you might feel a little bit uncomfortable, even ashamed, because maybe it doesn't feel like you know who you are. Maybe it doesn't feel like you understand where you come from. Maybe it doesn't feel like you know who you are as an Indigenous person. But that's okay, because that's a lot of us. And we're all in this boat together. We all have this responsibility to learn. And I think where it starts is just realizing how important all this stuff is to who we are as Indigenous people, and realizing that it's important to hold on to our identities. It's not something that was only needed in the past and we don't need it to move forward. As Indigenous people, we have a responsibility to live in two worlds now. We have to live in the modern society where we have to graduate from school. We have to go to university and get degrees so we can bring knowledge, bring information back into our communities and use that to help our people. Because, like it or not, non Indigenous entities, governments, organizations, they will only recognize those degrees, those papers that prove that you've done the work and done your education and that you know what you're saying. They don't take our way of life into consideration. They don't take our elders' teachings or knowledge keepers into consideration. So it's a responsibility of us Indigenous people to live in two worlds. We have to find a way to fit into modern society, modern education systems by going out and getting our schooling, getting our education. But one of the largest parts that we have to remember is we can't forget about who we are. We can't forget about where we come from and who we are and our identity as Indigenous people, because there's so much power in that, my friends. There's a lot of power in who we are as Indigenous people, because first and foremost, we're very spiritual people, and that's how we connect with each other. And that's what our teachings have told us for thousands and thousands of years, that we need to remember the importance of Wakutuin, which in the Cree language is the concept of relations and how you're related to people and how we're connected to each other. That's something that we've started to forget, since residential schools have moved into our communities, since we were taken away from our families and placed into foster homes. We started to forget how we're connected. We started to forget how we're all one people and that we need to be there to support each other and love each other. And it almost sounds like a fairy tale these days, right? Because you look at how our communities are, we're quite divided because of politics, because of last names, because of historical relations between our families when it comes to politics moving into our communities. We are not as connected as we used to be. And it's a huge task to try to remember that concept of Wakuhtuan. Many of my relatives and my friends that have grown up in the cities, they feel a disconnect from who they are. They don't really understand the language, they don't understand our teachings. And, unfortunately, for some of them, it feels almost like a shameful thing that I'm supposed to know who I am. I'm supposed to know my language, where I come from, and I don't. Who am I, right? It's almost like an identity crisis. But the thing is, even if we forgot, even if we were never exposed to our identity growing up, if we weren't exposed to our languages, our cultural knowledge, our traditional skills, even if we weren't exposed to all of that, for some of us it's been so long since we last went to a ceremony. It's been so long since we last heard people speak in our language. Some of us may have forgotten what it's like to be an Indigenous person. Some of us, because of religious beliefs, have also chosen not to acknowledge who we are as Indigenous people, not to acknowledge that identity, those cultural teachings, and that way of life. But whether you've forgotten or you choose not to partake, the thing is, your spirit has never forgotten who you are as an Indigenous person. Your spirit still remembers those teachings. Your spirit still remembers how it feels to sit in a ceremony. Your spirit still remembers what our traditional music sounds like. That's why when you go to a powwow or you go to a round dance, you feel it. You don't just hear it, but you feel it inside. You can feel the beat of the drum. You can feel the good music, and it makes you feel good. It brings up your spirits, it brings up your vibe, but you feel it. It feels good, and that's your spirit remembering who you are as an Indigenous person. Whether it's been 20 years, 50 years, your spirit doesn't forget, because this has been our way of life for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Different religions, Western systems have only come in to our communities over the last few hundred years. Before that, we all knew who we were, we all knew where we came from, and that's something that we practiced generation after generation after generation. And now, with so much changing in the last few hundred years, so much destruction that our languages and our communities have been through, it's a difficult time. But I think it's also time to reverse that trend. It's also time to start recovering from the cycles that a lot of our communities and our family members are stuck in. And my hope is that we have to start recovering, because our elders are only going to be around for so much longer. And our elders hold the key to a lot of our teachings, a lot of our languages. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to live in a world where I'm Indigenous on the outside, but on the inside, I don't know who I am. And I don't have the possibility of recovering that. So that's why it's important right now to start doing the work, to start realizing the importance of identity. When I was growing up, back when I was a teenager, I didn't really understand anything about who I was. Sure, I grew up on the res, I grew up in our community, but I wasn't really exposed to our languages. I wasn't really exposed to our teachings and our culture and our customs. And to be truthful, I actually didn't think it was that important to learn about. But as I've gotten older, as I've gone through things in my life and I've recovered from them, I've recovered from, alcoholism, and I've recovered from difficult bouts with mental health. And it made me realize, it made me understand that there's an untapped power that's held within our teachings and our customs and our music, our ceremonies. And one thing I'd like to mention right now, and if you don't hear anything else in this episode, I'd like you to hear this. If you're going through a difficult time, if you're going through a tough part in your life, you're dealing with mental health issues or something's happening in your life, in your family, in your community, I want you to remember that we have ways to deal with our mental health issues. We have our own ways to deal with tough times in our lives. I'm not advising you against going to the mental health therapist or, seeking more Western methods of dealing with mental health. But what I'm saying is, we've had things in place for thousands of years before we've ever heard of a mental health therapist or a psychologist. We've had our medicines in place, we've had our teachers, and we still have all of these places that we can go to heal, that we can go to recover, that we can go to remember our strength, to build ourselves back up again. And in my opinion, these ways will always be more powerful than what the modern society can give us. And how do I know that? How am I so confident in saying that? It's because, like I said, I've been through it. And these are the things that I use to help me through it. Our way of life has helped me through many things in my time. And my hope is that you can open your eyes to how powerful our ways are and how powerful you are as an Indigenous person. We've been through a lot, our families, our communities, our people. We've lost a lot, but that just means we have a lot to recover. That just means we have a lot of work to do, but we're strong people and we can do it. Doesn't matter where you grew up, doesn't matter that you don't know a lot now. What matters is you realize the importance. What matters is that we start taking action soon. Because before I leave this earth, I want to see our young people practicing our teachings, speaking our languages, and knowing who they are as Indigenous people, and being 100% proud of that. So just do your best with the resources that you have, the people that you have. Start somewhere, start small, and learn as much as you can, because our ways are worth holding on to. Our identities are worth holding on to. Being Indigenous is not something that we can let slip into the past. And the bonus material is that whatever you're going through in your life, whatever struggles you're going through mentally, physically, there's a way to heal from that using our languages, using our ceremonies, our teachings. It's all out there for us. It always has been. Like I said, even if you forgot or even if you have chosen not to partake, it's still there for you and it always will be. But it's our responsibility right now to try to maintain that, to try to recover what we've lost, not only for ourselves, but for our kids and their kids too, so that we can ensure that this way of life, our identities and our languages survive longer than we do as people. There's so much more to talk about on this topic, but I think I'm going to leave it there for today. Perhaps I'll visit it in a future episode. If you enjoyed this message, please make sure to subscribe. Make sure to share this episode with your family and friends if you think that they'd benefit from hearing this as well. I really enjoyed chatting with you, my friends, today. Take care, and we'll see you on the next one.